Yes, Saurabh. Let's go.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Saurabh Talekar. I'm an orthopedic surgeon. To be very precise, I specialize in knee and hip replacement surgeries. Due to a specific personal experience with mental health, I started an organization called Holistic Care Center. This event has been brought to you by Holistic Care Center, and I'll tell you what led me to having started this organization. About 3 years back, I was in medical residency in orthopedic surgery, where I was doing well. I was at the top of the field working in a top hospital at Mumbai, and there was just one small problem. I had persistent backache, a bone doctor who had backache. So I went to all of my seniors. So my seniors were one of the best, mostly the best orthopedic surgeons in Mumbai. I went to one, I went to another. We did the usual bits. And the usual bits told me that you're very normal. So I'm a very sporty person. I try to keep myself fit. So every investigation showed that everything's okay with me. And but the pain continued, and I used to take 4 to 5 days off every 2 or 3 months because I was in pain. Then we started doing serious investigations like MRI scans, serious blood tests, expensive investigations. I started seeing many people, and we were not able to know what is the cause of this pain. At the end of this residency, I lost my father after a long time when he was really sick. And finally, I decided that I need to see someone to seek help. I think I need to get off this grief, what I'm suffering from because of the disease my father is facing and because of his death right now. So I saw a psychiatrist. Uh, Immediately after the treatment which I was offered, my mood changed. I was somehow feeling that I was able to get out of this grief very comfortably. Then he also asked me if I have some other medical issues. So I just smiled at him that yes, I'm an orthopedic surgeon who's not been able to fix my back pain. Uh, so he told me this can be also related to the stress I'm having. So he started me on some medication, and as usual, he told me just don't Google what I'm prescribing you, as all of us do. So this medication was concerning my stress and stress backache, and it really healed my back pain. Taking this treatment with this particular psychiatrist, I was really a different person in about 3 months. And I was able to go in the market, raise capital, have funding, and start this organization, Holistic Care Center. And I am no expert on mind health or mind healing, but this is why I am in front of you, bringing this topic to you. And since then, I have tried to go to various specialists. So I, right now at Holistic Care Center, work with various specialists who are from various fields concerning holistic healing, which do not consider a human being mere as a bones, skin, and organs. They consider him as body, mind, and spirit. So there are various specialists like psychiatrists, psychologists, yoga and meditation coaches. I also work with a lot of specialists who are inclined to naturally healing all of the diseases which exist. So if you have noticed that infective diseases have been decreasing in the 21st century and diseases related to lifestyle are on the rise. And now, when we are in this lockdown, even uh, we humans are understanding the importance of mind health. So here I present to you, after this short description about myself, our guest for today evening's session is an old friend of mine. I know her for about 10 years. We've been in contact due to various work together. And I will just give a short introduction about Shraddha Sankulkar. Welcome, Shraddha. It is a pleasure having you here.
Thank you.
Shraddha Sankulkar is a founder, director of Mind Matters, a psychological guidance unit, and a school of emotional intelligence in Mumbai. Shraddha Sankulkar has earned a master's degree from Department of Applied Psychology, University of Mumbai. With her 23 years of practice as a psychologist, Shraddha has been offered a psychological consultation and training solutions, and thereby empowering individuals to cope up with various attitudes, thinking, and behavior related issues. Her experience as a mental health professional involves counseling, training, and research activities pertaining to pediatric and adolescent issues, breakups, quarter life crisis, youth counseling, suicidal issues, premarital counseling, marital counseling, career and academic related issues, midlife crisis, geriatric issues. She believes majorly in application of positive psychology and holistic and proactive interventions for early detection of psychological problems so that further well-being related to complications which may lead to depression, anxiety, and suicidal tendencies can be avoided. Welcome, Shraddha. It is a pleasure having you here. Do you want to add something from your part as part of your introduction? Yes, Shraddha. Hello, Shraddha. Are you here? I think we have some technical issue. Just give us a minute and Shraddha will be with us.
Hello.
Yes, Shraddha.
Yeah, I lost connection. Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah. So, thank you for introduction.
Would you like to add something as a part of your introduction? Did I miss anything?
That's it. That's it. You just did it. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Coming down to today's topic, managing toxic emotions. So my first question to you, Shraddha, is what role do emotions play in our life and what kind of emotions do we have?
Okay. So as I answer, I'll also do a slide share. Okay. Shall I go ahead with it? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Hello to everyone, and let's start with the discussion. Talking about managing toxic emotion, the very first question which sort of happened to ask as to what exactly what role do emotions play in our life? If you notice, just the way the body has 5 external sense organs, where we vision, hearing, smell, taste, touch. The body happens to sense the external world with the help of these 5 external sense organs. Similarly, the brain has certain sensors, okay, which is basically located in the limbic system. Let me not go into the technicality of it, but there are these circuits that actually make sense of our well-being and survival. Okay, we call them as emotions actually, and the 5 basic emotions are happiness, sadness, fear, disgust, anger, and surprise. These are word labels that we have given to these sensors. Okay, every emotion is basically keeping a track of the well-being that is around and giving the mind the calculation as is the environment good for your survival or bad for your survival. Every emotion will also have a biochemistry associated with it. Okay, now if you notice, these are some chemicals that actually are released when you are experiencing a particular emotion. So for example, not only hormones, neurotransmitters and hormones that you are, just seeing some names: serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins. These have come into popular understanding, sort of. So if you notice, dopamine is a reward kind of a chemical. When that gets released in the body, in the brain, we feel that we feel nice, okay, and feel good about life. Oxytocin is considered to be the trust hormone or the love hormone. Serotonin is the calm hormone. When you feel calm, it's inside you are actually experiencing the release of the chemical serotonin. And endorphin is considered to be the pleasure chemical. Okay, now just to give a gist is, when you feel, so when you say I feel happy, okay, so when you are verbalizing happiness, basically in the brain, these chemicals have been released. Only then we can actually experience that particular feeling. Now, if you notice, in the lockdown times and when we are feeling sad about something, there are chances of serotonin to be low, dopamine to be low, due to we are not bonding with our loved ones, which are outside our home, as a result of which the bonding chemical or the trust chemical is low. So as a result of which, there are high chances of that particular chemistry to come, where we might feel sad, or we may feel afraid about living, sort of. So that's the emotion part, sort of.
So I think the bonding has been taken care by events like this. Shraddha, what do you say?
Absolutely. This is extremely important, though it's digital, but still it's important that, that sense of, it's basically a matrix. Okay. That's how you actually perceive. It's all about perception. Okay. Let me just put this, there's a research proof fact. Okay. Let me now quote this part here, that when you are in stress, when you're feeling really low, okay, and this is research, even if what you need to do is, on a very SOS basis, is, even though if it's a phone call, okay, that you're doing, on the other end, if it's your comfort figure, if there's some comfort figure, it may be a granny, it could be a mom, any person that's a friend, or any person who has given you comfort, okay, in most of the growing years of your life, or even from your friend circle also. When you hear the voice of that person, okay, cortisol levels come down to a large extent, sort of. So, here we are having an audio visual experience, so nothing like it, So I'm sure a lot of happy chemicals must be releasing. Only thing one has to note, one has to be careful. On the other end, there should not be a toxic person. Okay, that's it.
So getting back to your topic, so which emotions are good and which emotions are bad for our survival?
Okay. So again, taking you back to the presentation. Yeah. Okay. Now this question generally is asked to me as to, isn't happiness a good emotion, and sadness or fear or anger, these are emotions that people think they should be, avoided, and they are averse. Okay. On that, I would like to tell this, that these emotions, like I already established, I already discussed that they are sensors of your brain. They are sensors of your mind. Okay. So when we say that, you know what, so I usually in my training, I ask people like, you know, which one is your favorite emotion? And everyone says like, you know, why should you even ask? Okay. Obviously it's happiness. Okay. And how can anyone want sadness? How can anyone want anger or fear? Okay. They are something that are they you know, already, you know, make a judgment that they are bad emotions. Okay. So when this question comes like, you know what, which ones are good emotions and which one are bad emotions, I would say this: all are important for our survival. Okay. No, the fact that they are there, okay, they are serving a purpose somewhere. I'll give you an example here. Okay. I want to tell you a small, quickly, I'll tell you this. There was this client who, by the way, I refer my patient as clients. Okay. Because I follow the client approach therapy. So depending upon the client, so I'll be using the word client, which is basically, that's the reason I'm giving you this reference. Okay. So there was this client, elderly woman, who came to me, maybe in her 60s, okay, late 60s. And this actually happened. She removed a checkbook, okay, from her bag, and she blank check she kept in front of me, and she's saying that, you know what, put any amount out there. Okay. And I was a little bit taken aback as to what is this happening. And I said, what for? So she said that, you know what, take any amount, okay, but give me happiness. I said, why do you say that? She's saying that all my life I have gone through fear, I have gone through sadness, okay, I have never seen happiness. So I can do anything to get into a zone where I'm experiencing full on happiness, no other emotion. Okay. When she said that, I said, you know what, please keep this checkbook inside. Okay. And let me first explain this to you, that every emotion, okay, is very, very important. And the fact that they are there, okay, it is serving a purpose. She's saying, no, I mean, I don't believe you. Okay. I have come here for happiness. Tell me if you're going to give me happiness in some kind of a tool or therapy that is going to give that, then I'm interested. I said, just listen to me one thing. She's saying, okay, fine, go ahead. So I said, let's take by some kind of a magic, okay, I create that situation, that zone in you where, you know, you're completely experiencing only happiness, okay, and no other emotion, no other, you know, the basic emotions, basically, okay. So she's saying, okay, fine. And then in that zone, when you are completely into fear, into happiness, no fear experience, no anger experience, no sadness experience, and the other emotions, and you go on a trek. Okay, you go on a trek, you're going in the forest, and when you are trekking, okay, a poisonous snake comes in front of you. But if you are in the happy mode, there are high chances that that snake may, you know, attack you, because you know, it's trying to save its life, because it may think that, you know, you may take its life. Okay. So point here is basically that now when you are experiencing danger, you are supposed to experience the emotion of fear, not happiness. So when you're experiencing fear, okay, fear is trying to tell you something to either fight your fears or run away. That's called flight and flight mechanism. But in where you are supposed to experience fear, which could help you, okay, you are experiencing some other emotion, that means the calibration is not right, okay, in the brain, and something needs to be done there, sort of. And that's where she understood, okay, fine, you know what, the other emotions are important for survival. Okay. Another example I'll give you how disgust is good for you. Okay. Let's take, if you have some leftover food that you are, you know, eating the next day, late brunch or something like that, you cook, you just heat it for some time, and when you go to eat, when you go to have the first morsel, and if you realize, you know, there's some kind of a sourness to it, okay, the emotion that you're going to experience is disgust. And you are supposed to experience disgust, because if you swallow that maybe poisonous food, you may die. So the point is, you know what, just staying in happiness is not going to help you. Rather, it may kill you also, if the other emotions are not there to take care of you, sort of. So you know what, which emotions are good and which ones are bad for our survival, all are important. The whole idea is, you know, you need to have the intelligence to really, you know, make a decision as to, you know, which one is good and which one is bad in that particular moment. That's the answer. Saurabh? Your voice, your mic, Saurabh.
I'm sorry, I can just remember about one example. The best example is the anxiety you have a night before an exam. And that is what helps you perform the next day. So coming back,
Absolutely.
how and when do emotions become toxic? If everything is important, so how do they get toxic?
Okay. 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 So the power, I'm audible, right? Yeah. So the power of emotions. Emotions are essentials for one's constructive growth as well as, but on the other side, if not managed, properly, emotions can cause destructive consequences. Okay, and so it's like that. The coin has two sides. So similarly, emotions will also have two sides. Okay, on one side, these same emotions, these same sensors can help you grow constructively, but on the other side, the same emotions will have a destructive consequences. Okay, and when these emotions actually start, so it's a continuum, after a point of time when these emotions go into the destructive levels, basically that's when it becomes toxic. But to give you more this thing, all emotions matter, but how and when emotions become toxic. Okay, now before I go to that the pointers, basically let me tell you, this is, see, it's this way, like we have this cell phone of ours. Okay, and I'm giving you an analogy here. When the power of the cell phone, okay, comes down, okay, the mobile phone, like we charge, and when it's a lot of 5% only energy is left in it and all. Okay, what we do is basically we take that we take the charger and we plug it into the socket, electricity socket. Fine. So here the electricity is helping us be functional on some of our device, right? But what if I, okay, put my raw fingers into the socket? I'm going to get a shock. So electricity is the same, but is this electricity serving you to grow somewhere, or is this electricity is trying to create an anti-survival scenario for you? Okay, when emotions help you achieve something in positive, okay, where your growth happens, that's when it is not toxic. Okay, but when the same emotion, okay, creates an anti-survival scenario for you, okay, when it is dangerous, when it is harmful for you, that's when we call that emotion has gone to the toxic level. Okay, so having said this, okay, typically when that happens actually, okay, so factors nurturing toxic emotions, I want to tell you this, tell all of you all this is, we have heard the word biohazards. Okay, and we see it in so many places. We have this symbol of biohazards, or when we see these oil tankers and all that, we have these warning signals, right? So there's not, till date, no authority has given a symbol regarding psychohazard. One of them I found it on the internet. So psychohazard, okay. So when certain conditions come across, okay, when I come across in my practice, not only why should a psychologist know that? Everyone should have this this knowledge of what conditions actually nurture the toxic emotions. Okay, early childhood teenage abuse. Okay, if someone has undergone early childhood and teenage abuse in form of, it could be a physical abuse, okay, it could be sexual abuse, it could be emotional, social, any kind of an abuse, starts creating a toxic kind of a feeling. It's like it's more of cortisol release all the time, more of the feeling of they start feeling unsafe. Okay, insecurity is what they are floating into, sort of. So these early childhood teenage abuse is one nurturing ground for toxic emotion to bubble, and these children, these teenagers, when they become adults, okay, all of that abuse is still there in the brain, in the memory, basically. What happens is when someone in their environment, okay, triggers something that is basically reminding them of the childhood abuse or teenage abuse of any kind of a form, okay, that's when that toxic emotion starts coming, when their anger is not just normal anger, It can go to a toxic level of, throwing things away, throwing things here and there, trying to, maybe, they may tend to be, they were once upon a time victims, they may become abusers if they have the scope for that. Okay, again, it's may, if it's not processed. Okay, then certain inferiority complexes. If people are not working on their inferiority complexes, or rather, there's no inferiority complexes as such. It's all a perceived thing. Okay, so if someone is having certain inferiority complexes, which really they are bothered about, sort of, that again can be a nurturing ground for toxic emotions to be the same. Also, unprocessed emotional trauma. Okay, like death of a loved one or breakup, okay, which is not being able to, they are not able to forget it, sort of. Okay, that actually can create toxic emotion, where fear can go to a toxic level, a dangerous level, a level which is harmful. So for example, we hear suicides being done. Okay, that is basically, it could be out of anger, it could be out of fear of, oh, I'm abandoned. Okay, and now I am not able to go ahead in life, my life has become dysfunctional. So it's the fear emotion blown out of proportion in a very toxic manner, which is a harmful level. Okay, then maladaptive and rigid belief systems. This is yet another condition which actually can create the nurturing grounds for toxic emotions. Maladaptive and rigid belief system. I'll give an example here. Is like, I have entered the industry now. Okay, within next 2 years, I want to go to this particular level, and anyhow I will reach there. And if I do not reach there, I'm a loser. If you have this belief system where things are not in your control, high chances of fear to go to the next level, and desperation, anger to go to the next level, which is harmful for that person, sort of. And also, it's seen that psychosomatic disorders, basically, that we have heard of, basically, that also can create toxic emotions. So sometimes what happens is, or even physical disorders actually can create, a sense of loss of, control in life, kind of a thing, as a result of which emotions can go out of proportion. Okay. Unexpressed, this is the quote that I would want. Unexpressed emotions. Here, I just want to add one more word here. Sigmund Freud, the father of modern psychology, has quoted this, but I would like to add one more word here. Unexpressed toxic emotion will never die. They are buried alive and will come forth later in uglier ways. So I highly suggest people to really work and express their emotions in a very systematic and the right manner, or if need be, to a counselor, sort of. Yes.
That was some really important information from you, Shraddha. I think so. Even medical specialists like me do not think about all of this. We've been taught about all of this in school, and we've gotten all of this by the time we get into practice. And I think this session is going to be really helpful for the people who come from non-medical backgrounds, who are not introduced to all of these information. So, and this is a very important part of our life. So getting to the more serious issues, which is do depression and anxiety, are they an outcome of these toxic emotions?
Yeah. Okay, so your question is, depression and anxiety a result of unprocessed toxic emotions? It's a big yes. Okay, definitely. So you know what, for the layman and popular media, okay, the last thing that is diagnosed, or the last straw on the camel's back, as they say, like, everyone sees the consequences, but no one is knowing the process that actually head towards those consequences. So depression and anxiety, okay, when someone is experiencing that, it is coming from somewhere. So what happens is, depression, it is a negative byproduct of the emotion of sadness. So feeling sad is all right. That's what we understood. Okay, when you're feeling sad, that's fine. So when you're feeling sad, okay, the brain and the limbic system, okay, is trying to tell you something. Okay, is trying to communicate. It's a biochemical feeling which needs to be interpreted in a manner, okay? And that's where emotional intelligence comes in the picture. But because we are not trained on, developing emotional intelligence in our education system or wherever we are exposed to education, sort of, we naturally do not have those tools. So I won't blame people regarding that. But having said this, let me explain this to you, that feeling sad is all right, but when does sadness grow into depression? Okay, so many people have a wrong what you call interpretation for this thing. I want to tell you, this is basically it's like people coming to me, okay, and they're saying that I'm depressed. Okay, so they are starting with this statement that I'm depressed. Now, when I hear that, I say that, let me decide that if you're depressed or not. No, but I'm feeling really depressed. I said, okay, since when are you feeling depressed? And he says from morning, or she says from morning. Now, you cannot be depressed from morning, okay? You can be sad from morning, okay? So then why did I say this? Why did I take the timeline out here? Because there is a criteria for diagnosing depression, okay? And there is a timeline that is associated. So what exactly is the timeline, okay? Persistent and persuasive feelings of sadness lasting for more than 14 days, accompanied with, now I'll tell you accompanied with what, but 14 days, that are 2 weeks are required to do the proper diagnosis, acute depression, okay, regarding if that person has depression or not. But what do you mean by persistent persuasive? It means, let's take, I'm feeling sad. If someone has, I get to know from someone that, someone is not well who I care for, sort of, okay. Now that has made me sad, okay. Or maybe someone someone who has invested in the stock market, and that stock market has fallen down, and that has made him sad, okay. Now this feeling of sadness, which is all right, okay. If he works towards it, then very next day the sadness is going to go. But if this person is feeling sad, everywhere he goes, he's going to eat an ice cream at the ice cream parlor, he's thinking about that, okay. If he's playing board games with his friends, he's feeling sad about it. That's what I mean by persistent and persuasive. It's like overwhelming. It is not allowing you to concentrate on something that you're doing, or so your work also. But this has to last for more than 14 days, accompanied with if pessimistic thinking is happening, feelings of helplessness and low physical energy, leading to avoidance of earlier loved basic activities. These are the 3 things also that are developing along with the sad feeling for more than 14 days. Then that person is heading towards the condition of depression, okay. Now, toxic anxiety. Now let me talk about anxiety. Now I'm using the word here, toxic anxiety, because anxiety also can be good, okay, and positive, okay. But here we are talking about the negative, harmful, and something that is going to damage you. That's what I'm referring as toxic anxiety. Like sort of you mentioned this, that before the exams we had this anxiety, and that anxiety was required for us to drive ourselves to actually study, right? So accordingly, that anxiety was good for us. But toxic anxiety, now what happens? Anxiety is a byproduct of fear, okay. Fear has a concrete source. Now, what is the difference between fear and anxiety? Okay, fear has a concrete source, like that this is threatening. Okay, but anxiety has it's an abstract source. I'll give you an example here. Okay, let's take you're gone for a vacation in the mountains. Okay, and a snake happens to come in the room, and you actually see a snake there, or you actually see some threat. You actually see it, and then we may run away, and when we come back to the room, we don't know where the particular snake has gone, okay? But now the room is not having any snake. But you think that what if it is under the sofa? What if it is under, the sofa, the chair, or it's gone into the cupboard? Now, this is an imagined fear, or this is something which is cooked up in the mind, and you actually don't know the source also. Okay, is it really there? So if you notice right now also what is happening regarding the COVID-19 situation, yes, there is fear. There is fear being experienced, okay? But people have gone into the toxic anxiety mode, where a lot of they are turning into a lot of dysfunctional kind of a scenarios for themselves, where they are getting into this abstraction and may get paranoid and not actually calculating in a way which is good for them, basically. So I'm not saying you don't have to be afraid about the COVID-19 situation, But if it goes to toxic anxiety, your other things that are functional, that also may come down. So yes, to that extent, yes, depression makes a person feel hopeless. Anxiety makes a person feel insecure. So when we say that, vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change. So when we talk about vulnerability, what exactly I'm trying to say about vulnerability? Again, vulnerability can be good as also bad. Okay. What do you mean by vulnerability is basically you are exposing yourself to threat. Okay, that's vulnerability. Okay, now that threat can actually help you, innovate, create, and change for good, or that threat or that sadness can actually do the negative innovation, negative creativity, and negative change because of the emotions going toxic. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. That was great, great information, and the importance of this. Before I got into this field of holistic care, I did a research of. So what I found out in the research was India was the capital of depression. What people would not agree to, and there are various studies quoting numbers like 89% of Indian population is depressed. Out of these 89% people, about 76% people are shy to go and receive help for this, or see a doctor for this, or see someone for this. So moving ahead, and the very important part is, how do you manage these toxic emotions?
Okay. Yeah. So managing toxic emotions. Okay. First, what naturally or randomly what people do. Okay, I would want to discuss that. Okay, if not guided with the right kind of a systematic approach. So I want to discuss as to unhealthy practices and healthy practices. Okay. So let me start with unhealthy coping strategies. Okay. So when you're going through negative, toxic emotions. Okay. Now the reasons, whatever the reasons were, which we discussed earlier, many people they don't feel there's a requirement to treat it. Okay, they may get into a lifestyle that will actually somehow try to help them cope with it, but that lifestyle could be an unhealthy coping strategy regarding the toxic emotion. So let me just quickly list certain trends seen. Okay, a certain pattern seen that actually heads towards unhealthy coping strategies towards toxic emotion. Substance abuse. Okay, resorting to alcohol, drugs, regarding LSDs and cocaine and all of that stuff that is out there. Okay, the teenager or the youth or whoever it is, who is experiencing certain toxic emotions, but he or she is not able to process it in the right manner. As a result of which, they may choose a lifestyle where substance abuse can be dominant in their life, and through that substance abuse, they are trying to cope up. But again, that is an unhealthy coping strategy. Now, let me make it very clear to you, to everyone, that why am I calling it unhealthy? Okay, and when I call the other category is the healthy category is. See, many people say that, but I'm no more feeling bad about my breakup after I drink it. So don't you think it's a good coping strategy? You know what? Any strategy any strategy which is considered to be, a solution, if it is considered to be a solution, but that solution, if it is creating another problem, then that I will not consider that to be a healthy coping strategies. Okay, so substance abuse, this person is abusing alcohol, okay, to just numb himself or herself, okay, regarding that. And if he's doing it for a longer period of time, high chances of his liver to get damaged. Okay, or if he's abusing drugs, okay, it's a research proof fact, when chronic illegal drugs, okay, when they're consumed, they may damage the circuitries of the brain, as a result of which your creativity goes for a toss and others. So in the long run, it is going to create another problem. So the temporary relief that they are taking from some unhealthy coping strategies become unhealthy. That's why they become unhealthy. Okay, so substance abuse is one lifestyle engagement that people do. Hoarding stuffs. I've noticed that, not all of them, but this is one more pattern I've seen, like for typically anxiety, separation anxiety, okay, people having gone through separation anxiety, they may like to, they may like to hoard stuff, like, it could be some expense. If they have money, it could be an expensive kind of a, material, maybe watches, or, whatever they can afford, and they have this interest in. But one or two is not enough, multiple is what they try to hoard together. Not only that, clothes hoarding, okay, it could be, if it could be, I've done a home visit where actually I've seen a lot of newspapers. Like if you enter that home, newspapers, old newspapers, 10 years back newspapers were there, sort of, so there only I came to know that, there is some kind of a separation anxiety that may be there. Again, of course, a case study has to be done, but that could be a symptom where this person is missing someone or multiple people so much that they are trying to compensate that loss with so much of hoarding together, because that hoarding material becomes, a person who they would like to cling to. Okay, so hoarding stuff. Okay, workaholism. Okay, people heavily involved into their work. Okay, and it might be considered to be glamorous to be, so much dedicated and to work, but basically, but reading between the line, high chances that the person may not have another life. Okay, or he or she is trying to fill a vacuum somewhere. If it is out of a choice, if he has a good life and is he working on other things, then that won't be coming in as a worker, getting into the workaholism category. But if he has no choice, or she has no choice, but this is what is everything for him, and he's trying to compensate it with, in a skewed manner, you compensate it with work, high chances there are some unprocessed toxic emotions that he's trying to, or she is trying to heal, sort of, somewhere. Okay, emotional binge eating. Yeah, binge eating also, people try to manage their toxic emotion. Again, these are unhealthy coping strategies by binge eating. Okay, or creating that that emotional eating. You know what, when you eat for your body and for nutrition, then that is okay. But even after having your food, if something you want to munch, okay, and what happens by then, those chemicals that we mentioned about, dopamine release may be happening because of that favorite food of their, junk food of their, dopamine release and serotonin, all these chemicals may be releasing not by a good lifestyle or healthy lifestyle, but with some particular food that may be creating that kind of a coping strategy for this person. Impulsive shopping. Okay, impulsive shopping, if you don't need something, okay, and if someone wants to just just buy it on impulse, later on they regret that, what, this is what I didn't want, but why did I take it, sort of. High chances, and of course not once, twice, but if that is a pattern, then that is definitely because they feel the control. There's a control mechanism in all of this. All what is being listed out here, that's a control is what they are trying to seek in their life, which is not naturally happening. Okay, because of the unprocessed toxic emotions. Homicide, suicide, and genocide could be their management of toxic emotion. Then excessive sexual stimulation through watching pornography, masturbation, or certain paraphilias are also connected to managing toxic emotions in an unhealthy manner. Now let's talk about the healthy coping strategies. Okay, healthy coping strategies: timely expressing to an unconditional person, could be a family member or a friend, or you can express it in a journal or to a professional counselor. In a bracket, it is PS. I'll tell you what you mean by PS. But presence of an unconditional presence of a person who gives you unconditional positive regard. Now, this word, many people think, what, this is just a fantasy. There's no one around who is having this unconditional positive regard these days, sort of. Here I would like to say that, what, have we really worked towards relationship management? Okay, if we are only working towards earning money, okay, because that is a value for people, right? But on the other side, if you create the value that, no, I need to really create the right people in my life, okay, who will serve to be the unconditional positive regard person in my life, or people in my life. And when you think about this, it also has to be vice versa. Are you being an unconditional positive regard for that person? Okay, so that also is important to be, thought for today, because you know what, this particular factor becomes very, very important. That's the comfort figure I talk about, because I have noticed in suicidal cases, okay, the last phone call or the last communication that a person may do would be towards this unconditional positive regard person, okay, and it's very important for that person to really have this vulnerable person on the radar in his low times. Actually, sometimes some people do not have such people, so you know what, they tend to really feel that who cares if I die and things like that, okay. So it's important that timely expression to an unconditional friend or family, or if you do not have someone like that, write it in a journal, okay, or seek professional help. Counselors are trained to create that kind of a environment for you to really express, okay. And what is PS? I'll tell you later, because you will know what is PS and the other is MF, okay. Second is healing on past emotional traumas, scientifically seeking counseling. Now, healing on past emotional traumas, it's like this, that how much ever intelligent you are, how much ever creative you are, if there are past emotional traumas, they may act as a brake in the accelerator of your life, okay. So it's very, very important for really sorting on your emotional traumas. It's like this, analogically speaking, okay, when a cardiologist, when a heart patient goes to a cardiologist, this is an analogy. The cardiologist understands with the blood report that there is some problem, there seems to be some concerns regarding the health of this person's heart. So an angiogram is done, okay. In the angiogram, these blocks are seen, okay, and the certain blocks are really, really very much, certain blocks can be worked from the conservative treatment of medicines, but certain blocks have to be removed by the angioplasty, okay, and if required, bypass, okay. So until and unless, okay, the heart nerves, okay, are not those blocks are not removed from the heart arteries, the blood circulation is not going to be all right. On similar lines, okay, if people are holding to their emotional traumas, they are literally like the blocks, okay, which will be stopping their best potential, sort of. So I always guide people saying that, there are 3 emotional blocks that I have identified, okay. Unfortunately, there is still science has not gone to that level where we can do a like an angiogram, okay, some emotionalogram, okay, where we can actually see. But from a case study, people can, counselors and psychologists who have gone to that expertise can figure out how many blocks are there that needs to be worked on, sort of. So I highly recommend healing on past emotional traumas are very important. Again, it is a PS strategy, okay. Installing healthy and positive belief systems. Third is installing healthy and positive belief systems, where positive positive belief system is where the negative need to be uninstalled, okay, and the positive needs to be installed. These devices that we carry today, cell phones, laptops, from every 1 week, 2 weeks, this upgradation keeps happening, so that the system is in sync with the technology. Similarly, we humans, okay, we need to be really conscious about what belief system we are moving around with, okay. Is it in sync with the current times, okay? If it is not in sync with the current times, high chances there'll be an incompatibility, and adaptation would be a problem, okay. So that's called that's this thing. Then pursue sports, exercise, and some art form to regulate and channelize emotion. Now this is an MF strategy. Now I'll tell you what is the difference between PS and MF, okay. PS is basically weeding out the problem from its root, okay. To solve the problem from its root, that strategy will be called as problem solving strategy, PS. And when we pursue sports, exercise, and some art form to regulate and channelize our emotion, we are doing a mindfulness act. That's a mindfulness strategy. That's okay, where the problem is, even if the problem is still, so if you in a given situation, problem is not being able to solve, but you can just bring down the amplification of the toxic emotion experience, then that's where mindfulness strategies can be worked out, where problem is still not solved, but you are still feeling good about it, because you are just bringing down the faders of the toxic emotions. But sooner or later, problem solving has to be done to come out of the toxic scenario itself. And the last one is supervised meditation and yoga, which is again a mindfulness activity. And I also write ahead, etc. There are many more healthy coping strategies. But I mentioned supervised meditation and yoga. It is supervised because it's important to tell the supervisor what you're going through. It has to be customized, because a lot of people referring to YouTube videos and referring to self-help books, they tend to get into the mindfulness activity. But I highly suggest them to consult someone who is a dietitian, like way people go. So dietitian would be one more thing over here. Maybe holistic healthcare can help people in this particular and many more areas here. So having said that, one more video I want to say, one video I want to share here is, okay, many people ask me, Saurabh?
Yes, Shraddha. I had lost you in the middle.
Saurabh?
Yes, Shraddha. Go ahead.
Continue, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So many people ask me that, is it possible, like we were on the unhealthy coping strategy and now can we come to the healthy coping strategy? And I say, why not? Okay. It's never too late. But for that, there are certain conditions to be this. There has to be openness. That a person should say that, you know what, I'm ready to work on this. Tell me what I'm supposed to do. Okay. Because recent neuropsychiatry and psychological research has come to the concept of neuroplasticity. Okay, it is basically reprogramming and rewiring the brain. Okay, I'll tell you what exactly I mean by the 3 C's, but I would like you all to see a small video about this. That people believe that once it's installed in us, it's going to stay there for lifelong. That's not the case. And in my practice, I have seen positive results by application of neuroplasticity, but it takes time. Okay, it takes time, just the way when sort of can identify this very clearly, when a muscle or a ligament is torn. Okay, physiotherapy is suggested. Similar, and then when you go to a physiotherapist, the physiotherapist actually starts helping the patient to really develop the new neural networks. Okay, so that the function of that ligament or that bone or that muscle becomes all right. Similarly, on the same lines as psychotherapy, the psychologist, okay, the counselor, the psychologist will tell the right technique or give the right tool, which has to be practiced in the manner which is shown in the video. Okay, and accordingly, things will be fine, but time will be taken. Have a look at this video.
Not so long ago, many scientists believed that the brain did not change after childhood, that it was hardwired. Not so long ago, many scientists believed that the brain did not change after childhood, that it was hardwired and fixed by the time we became adults. But recent advances in only the last decade now tell us that this is simply not true. The brain can and does change throughout our lives. It is adaptable, like plastic. Hence, neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity. How does neuroplasticity work? If you think of your brain as a dynamic, connected power grid, there are billions of pathways or roads lighting up every time you think, feel, or do something. Some of these roads are well-travelled. These are our habits, our established ways of thinking, feeling, and doing. Every time we think in a certain way, practice a particular task, or feel a specific emotion, we strengthen this road. It becomes easier for our brains to travel this pathway. Say we think about something differently, learn a new task, or choose a different emotion. We start carving out a new road. If we keep travelling that road, our brains begin to use this pathway more, and this new way of thinking, feeling, or doing becomes second nature. The old pathway gets used less and weakens. This process of rewiring your brain by forming new connections and weakening old ones is neuroplasticity in action. The good news is that we all have the ability to learn and change by rewiring our brains. If you have ever changed a bad habit or thought about something differently, you have carved a new pathway in your brain and experienced neuroplasticity firsthand. With repeated and directed attention towards your desired change, you can rewire your brain.
Okay. Having said that, you have seen the process. what am I talking about? The 3 C's. Okay, in order to install a new pattern, a new non-toxic pattern, new positive pattern, you need to know that particular pattern correctly. The first C is correct. Okay, you need to know it correctly from an expert. Okay, then make sure you do it consciously. The second C is consciously. Okay, and when you do something correctly, when you do something consciously, the third C is do it consistently. When you get into this particular loop correctly, consciously, and consistently, the new pattern is going to be established. Understand something: when the new pattern is being established, the old pattern still exists. As a result of which, the old pattern doesn't allow you to go ahead with the new pattern. But still, that is the most difficult time, and that's when a counselor is with you. Just the way a physiotherapist will buck you up, come on, you can do it, kind of a thing, because the earlier days are the most difficult. Okay, so that is about this thing. The last thing is, it is not the strongest or the most intelligent who will survive, but those who can best manage change, as per Charles Darwin. Okay, so that is basically sort of, that's what I would, adaptability is nothing else but this.
This was really very informative, especially that slide of yours about managing toxic emotions. At the left were the bad ways of managing it, the right were the good ways of managing it. This is also like a guidance for me to how to pivot my holistic care to provide all of these services to all of these people who require it. We have some questions from the audience, which they have posted while they've filled the registration form and on our channel. So I'll just ask these questions.
Please.
If you're okay.
Yeah. You'll be asking me, right? I don't have to refer there, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So this is very interesting. Does loneliness trigger depression and anxiety?
Yes, the answer is yes. Okay, let's understand loneliness. Okay, but before that, we need to understand the difference between loneliness and aloneness. Okay, loneliness and alone means, is there any difference or is it the same? There is a difference. Okay, when you are alone, okay, you happen to say that, leave me alone. That's the quote that you do. Leave me alone. So it's a choice. Okay, leave me lonely. Who are you telling this to? That's the whole idea. Who are you telling this to? Okay, so having said this, let me tell you what exactly is being lonely. Okay, as a species, we humans as a species, okay, the feeling of loneliness is an anti-survival feeling. Why is the reason? Because let us understand the origin of the baby. Okay, when a baby is born, what if we keep the baby in a room and every one of us move away? Okay, it is dependent. The baby is dependent on some another human being for its survival. So that's where the social dependency comes. Okay, and that social dependency is absolutely primary. Okay, for a social animal to grow in a positive manner. Okay, so what happens in the very first 5 years of life? Okay, it is hardwired that I need someone, okay, to connect my spirit to and for my positive survival sort of. It's the parents to begin with. Later on, peer groups take over. Peer group, later on, all these people are there sort of. And it's all right to socially depend upon others. Okay, there are reasons why people don't depend upon others, because they have this negative judgments that happen around. So they try to isolate and things like that, or there are inferiority complex that have been inserted sort of. Okay, so having said that, loneliness is a loss of sense of belonging. So even out of 100 people, even if 100 people are around you, you may feel very much lonely. Why? Because you cannot connect with them. The spirit. So for example, okay, if you are if you're a writer, okay, and you write something down, okay, and you want to share that, this is beautifully that I have come up with, I want to share this with someone. You do not have someone else to share your positive spirit with. high chances, that feeling of loneliness might come. So what happens is there's a depression that can set in because that person starts feeling isolated and not cared for because of the lack of this social environment where he cannot feel like connecting, sort of. As a result of which serotonin will come low, okay, and the toxic emotions of sadness can go to the toxic level if it really matters to him. Again, if he says कि ये मेरी choice है, this is my choice, then you know what? Then he's not going to feel lonely. But if he wants to connect and if there is no one around him and he would have loved to connect, then that's where, loneliness might come in, sort of. That's where depression might come and anxiety might come, where like, what if I'm fallen sick? Is there anyone who can come and take care of me, or am I going to die unknown, sort of? Yes, anxiety and depression can result out of loneliness. And let me tell you something, there's a research. Feelings of loneliness, can go to that toxic level, okay, where heart disease can come early in life. There's a heart condition and loneliness are correlated. There's a high correlation between them. Feelings of loneliness, toxic feelings of loneliness is equal to, creating that stress chemistry within you, which is equal to smoking 10 cigarettes, okay, every day. It puts the pressure on the heart in that manner, basically, the blood pressure and this thing. So high chances, the more lonely you are, high chances of the life expectancy to be challenged. It's a research proof.
That is really great, and that really tells us during this period of lockdown, it's each of our responsibility that we do stay in touch and do we be there for our loved ones, our friends, our family, and you just make them feel not lonely. So I would request our guests, questions are coming in on the chat. I would request our guests, we can also, if someone wants to ask a question, they can unmute and they can ask a question. By the time I will take the next one, which I would like to ask you, Shraddha, regarding the recent event which has been in the media regarding Mr. Sushant Singh Rajput, and even I have lost a lot of artists who have been a really important part of our life, like Chester Bennington. So what is the psychology, or how do you understand this thing called suicide?
Okay. Saurabh, I would want to, talk from a more generic suicide from a more generic point rather than, in context of Sushant or Chester. I mean, that won't be okay for me to, quote on a platform like Facebook or something. Okay, I can give a generic thing about how the suicide thing. Okay, we have no idea about. I don't have any idea about the case study of these two people. So, what I can say is I can just tell the patterns, what can happen, okay? It's very, very important. It's basically, okay, when it comes to suicide, I'll talk about the suicide concept, okay? It's like I have noticed that low self-worth, if a person is going through low self-worth, okay, that is one vulnerable condition that can create that vulnerability, low self-worth, unable to express their emotions, okay, non-expression of their toxic emotion to someone, with low self-esteem and low self-worth. And the third thing is basically self-hatred can result into this condition that can make that particular person vulnerable to go to that extent, sort of. Having said this, when I mention these three things, okay, I mean, I'm not talking about these two people who you mentioned about. I'm just trying to say that when I see this pattern in my clients, okay, I'm alarmed. I mean, I get that alarm, and they are basically the ones who I'm, on priority. I have to, be SOS kind of, a ringtone has to be set and things like that. I do that to me, okay, my organization basically. But the point here is that it's important to understand that self-esteem and self-worth is the biggest deciding factor, and self-esteem and self-worth, okay, are derived out of 5 areas, which I will quickly tell. Okay, one is basically personality feature. One source of your self-esteem and self-worth is personality feature. Personality feature, which can be a physical personality feature or a psychological personality feature. For example, if I ask someone, what do you like about your personality? And if he says, you know what, I like my height, okay, or I like my eyes, okay, or I like my looks. So what is he doing? He's taking pride out of some bodily feature, okay, out of his, okay. If that person says, you know what, I like the way I understand others, okay, I like the way I'm empathetic about others. So that's another personality feature that they are taking pride of. So one source of your self-esteem and self-worth is some bodily or psychological personality feature. Other area is career. Okay, your career is another major source of your self-worth and self-esteem. Third is relationships. Okay, when I say relationships, I don't just mean romantic relationships, but relationship with family and others. That also gives you that validation and validation from those people who matter to you, sort of. Okay, career also gives that validation. Fourth area I have identified is academics. If you're studying, okay, if someone takes a pride, you know what, I study in Stanford, okay, or I'm doing this course. So they're taking pride from that, and that is basically validating them somewhere, okay. And the fifth area is activities, okay. Activities are basically activities that you perform not for professional reasons, but let's take strumming a guitar, and that person takes pride in strumming the guitar, and that particular activity is validating them. These 5 areas are the source of your self-worth, self-esteem, okay. And for some it will be 2 out of 5, some will be all 5 kind of a thing, okay. But I'll highly recommend it to be, it's like as they say, don't keep the eggs in one basket, so similarly do not keep the validation points in one particular area, basically, because if that one area is not there, then it's almost nothing for you, sort of, it's like light goes off kind of a thing. So as a result of which, I always give an analogy that imagine there is a glass, imagine that there is a glass swing, okay, which is, it's a lateral example, but I think this will help, okay. There's a glass swing which is tied with 5 ropes, okay, and it's swinging, okay. If I take a sword and I chop one rope, still on 4 it's hanging, right? If I chop another rope, still on 3 it's hanging, it's not crashed. But one by one, personality source gone, relationship source gone, academic source gone, or they don't, even if it is not gone, their perception is not that way, okay, this is not what I want it from a relationship that is more priority validation than others. So one by one, if everything, sometimes I have come across clients who came to me with one rope, the glass swing is hanging on one rope. I said, good enough. Now let's develop the other 4, you know what I mean? Or 2 or 3, whatever, and if the last rope is cut, that's when the glass swing crashes, and that's the end of it, sort of. So so we don't know what validated them, right? And whatever validated them may have gone out of their life, or it could be just an impulsive decision, because it just takes 2 minutes, 5 minutes, that impulsive decision, let's end our life. It's just 2 minutes, 5 minutes. If someone takes care of them for that 2 minutes, 5 minutes, high chances, some U-turn might have happened, sort of, because it's an impulsive, sometimes it's impulsive, sometimes it is absolutely planned. Okay. So that's my answer to it. Validation.
Like the bankers would say, diversify your funds.
Exactly.
is what you suggested, yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Mrs. Aarti Gupta, I think Shraddha Madam has answered your question, and there's an interesting question here. Can you, from Mr. Prashant Patil, can you suggest an exercise for anxiety? And the second question, what he has asked, I'll directly answer. Or can I consult for expertise for the same? Yes, you can consult with Shraddha anytime you want.
Thank you. Yeah. So shall I answer this anxiety question?
Yes, please.
Yeah. See, now again, there's a huge scope to it. Like, it has to be. I need to understand what kind of anxiety it is. Is it related to studies? Is it related to, that it's very important for me to know what exactly is the source of the anxiety. Okay. But basically a thumb rule for that is, okay, the thumb rule I can tell so much, okay. See, anxiety is basically coming out of insecurity. There's an insecurity element to that there is a threat to it, okay. Not only anxiety, but I will also, in fact, I did mention about it, like about depression and anxiety. Anxiety is a futuristic, or it's something that is not happening, okay, but you tend to have this abstract feeling sort of. What I highly suggest is, the moment you are trying to get into that that loop of that anxiety loop, what is happening is you're going into your future, okay. And usually I've seen that people who are having this sadness theme, the sadness theme, okay, the sad theme, they are basically referring to their past. You know what I mean? So the anxiety, there is a future to it, and depression, sadness, there is a past to it, sort of, that my past was good, now it's not that way. So people are plugged into the past, good past, and today that good past is not there, so they are sad about it. But anxiety, there are high chances of a future possibility. So if you notice, both of them, I'm just not answering the anxiety question here, I'm also answering the sadness, which may lead to depression question out here, is be in the moment, be in the present, okay, be in the present. So for example, okay, if some anxiety is bothering you, understand this tool that, okay, I'm going into my future. So now let me come back to the present. And how do you come back to the present is, what you need to do is, it's a very simple technique. There are many, okay, just whatever is around you, let's take, there is a water bottle around you, okay, there is a curtain around you, okay, you plug yourself, your 5 external sense organs into that particular. So of course you're looking at the curtain, and you have to focus on, how the curtain's texture is, how the curtain's design is. You have to get yourself in the present and distract yourself from the future and come into the present, okay. Initially it will be difficult, but you need to come back to the reality and go into the intricacies of it, sort of, so that's the reason painting and drawing and craft, because you are in the moment doing it, right? That's also in occupational therapy that happens, actually, so that's my answer to it. Shift yourself from that particular thing into going into the intricacies of this. How a child does it? You give a rattle to the child, it will start looking at it in a particular manner and going to the details of it. It's trying to chill it and all that. The best, the child is not going to go into anxiety because they are in the moment.
Great explanation. I just really like how you explain things in a simple way, giving examples which can be done in day-to-day things, and not using all those complicated words. And you just, I think, enter any simple mind who's
thank you so much,
and you can solve their issues.
हेलो.
Yes, ma'am.
हेलो. एक क्वेश्चन करना था मुझे.
Yes, please.
मैं ये पूछना चाहती थी, जैसे साइकोलॉजिकल का जो व्यक्ति, जैसे मान लीजिए अगर उसे कुछ बात बुरी लगी, मान लीजिए वो रो दे और अपना इमोशन फ्री कर ले अपने आप को, तो क्या ये किसी डिजीज में आता है?
ओके, ये देखिए, जब रो दे ना, तो रोना जो है वो एक कथारसिस माना जाएगा, वो माइंडफुलनेस में आएगा करके, वेयर यू आर बेसिकली सारा जो आपका एक टॉक्सिक इमोशन का जो एक केमिस्ट्री होती है ना, तो उसमें वो रो दिया करके, रोने पर से जब रो दिए ना, तो फिर डेफिनेटली एक हल्कापन महसूस होता है, विच इज ऑल राइट, ओके. लेकिन अगर ये रोना जो है ना, ये हद से बाहर होने लगा ना, तो ये डिप्रेशन का एक सिम्टम होता है, ओके. इट्स बेसिकली प्रपोर्शन के बाहर कोई भी चीज अगर हो रही है ना, तो फिर डेफिनेटली वो मेन मुद्दा जो है जिसके वजह से रोना आ रहा है ना, वो सॉर्ट आउट नहीं हो रहा है, लेकिन सिर्फ एक एक्सप्रेशन होते जा रहा है, राइट. एक पॉइंट आ जाएगा, अगर वो नहीं वर्कआउट किया तो पॉइंट आ जाएगा, या तो एक इंसान नासूर हो जाएगा, ही विल नॉट फील दैट काइंड ऑफ इमोशन बेसिकली, ओके।
नहीं
या तो
नहीं, एक्चुअली जैसे कोई वर्किंग पर्सन है, वुमन्स है मान लीजिए, तो अगर उसे, वो बहुत अच्छे आर्टिस्ट है, म्यूजिक पेंटिंग सब बढ़िया है, तो वो इतनी अच्छी आर्टिस्ट है कि उसको ना हर हर जगह पे दबाया जाता है कि ऐसा ना हो कि वो सबका जॉब खा जाए, या हर बार जब कभी भी कोई इंस्पेक्शन होता है तो कहा जाता है कि उसी का पूछा जाता है, तो दैट्स वाई। तो अगर ऐसी सिचुएशन, ऐसी कंडीशन में अगर वो व्यक्ति, उसे पता है कि उसके साथ बहुत ज्यादा अन्याय हो रहा है, उसको बहुत डोमिनेट किया जा रहा है, दैट थिंग में वो अपना, ऐसा नहीं कि वो बोल नहीं पाती है, वो बोलती भी है, सब कुछ करती है, लेकिन ठीक है, बुरा लग रहा है कि यार देखो अपने ही होके अगर अपने अपनों के साथ ऐसा कर रहे हैं, दैट टाइम शी इज क्राइंग लिटिल लिटिल, समटाइम्स ओनली फ्यू मिनट्स, एंड बट दे ऑल आर सेइंग कि ओ ये तो इमोशनली वो हैं, लूज हैं, ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए, रोना थोड़ी नहीं चाहिए। तो लोगों का जो रहता है, एक एक्सपीरियंस रहता है, वो खुद तो गलतियां एक्सेप्ट नहीं करते हैं, लेकिन जो जिसको सता रहे हैं वो अगर रो दिया तो और उल्टा उसको वो करते हैं कि भाई, तो ये जो एक समाज की जो एक रीत है उसके बारे में पूछूं तो उस व्यक्ति का क्या गलत है क्या? अगर वो अपना डिप्रेशन बोल भी लेता है, लेकिन वो थोड़ा सा अगर है तो अपना रो के निकाल लेता है, एंड देन ही शी इज अगेन रिफ्रेश, क्योंकि उसके पास अपना एक इतना अच्छा आर्ट मूवमेंट है कि उसे दुनिया की कोई चिंता ही नहीं है, वो अपनी फैमिली में खुश है।
जी जी, देखिए ये बहुत लेयर्स है इस क्वेश्चन में।
जी।
इतना मैं कह सकती हूँ कि यहाँ पे ना बिलीफ सिस्टम बदलने की जरूरत है। आपने वो देखा है ना कि कैसे साइको हजार्ड्स का वो वाला स्लाइड था, उसमें एक मैल अडेप्टिव बिलीफ सिस्टम्स, ओके, जो एक विश्वास के जो सिस्टम्स होते हैं आपके ना, वो बदलना जरूरी है, ओके, ऑन वन साइड। ऑन द अदर साइड समाज, सो इंडियन सोसाइटी बोलिए, वहां तक आज तक गई नहीं है जहाँ पे व्हाट मेंटल प्रॉब्लम्स को उसकी सेंसिटिविटी बढ़ी नहीं है। और मैं किसी को ब्लेम नहीं करूंगी, हमारा वो एवोल्यूशन अभी तक हुआ नहीं है कि समाज को ये हो रहा है
जी।
तो लेकिन हमने माइक्रो लेवल पे, मैक्रो लेवल की बात अगर हमारे कंट्रोल पे नहीं तो माइक्रो लेवल पे क्या किया जा सकता है ना, आई टेल यू व्हाट। और अगर व्हाट, ये लड़की जो है जिसके बारे में बोल रहे हैं, ओके, उसकी जो दुनिया है ना, वो एक्चुअल दुनिया नहीं है। उसकी जो दुनिया है ना, उसके माँ बाप है, उसका जो घर का माहौल है, अगर वो वाले अगर उसको सपोर्ट करेंगे ना तो they will
नहीं, वो तो वहां से तो पूरा सपोर्ट है ही, इसीलिए तो कोई उसको हरा नहीं पाता है, और यही उसका कॉज है कि वो जहां जाती है अपना कदम, ठोस कदम जमाती है और अपनी खुद की पहचान बनाती है। तो यही सबको लगता है कि हम उसको इतना दबाते हैं, पर वो एकदम बम करके अपनी प्रेजेंस दिखा देती है, यही लोगों को बहुत तकलीफ होती है।
हाँ, तो ऐसे में निकलना है,
नहीं तो वो तो
निकलना है।
नहीं, वो तो उसी दुनिया, अब देखो जॉब तो कहीं ना कहीं करना ही है, तो हर जगह ऐसे लोग तो मिलते ही हैं। मैं तो केवल ये क्वेश्चन इसलिए कर रही हूँ कि ये मैं कर रही हूँ, लेकिन हो सकता है और भी लोगों के मन में हो, लेकिन वो कर नहीं पा रहे होंगे। तो मेरा भी अपना एक सजेशन है कि दुनिया कुछ भी कर रहे हो, आप अपनी जॉब से सेटिस्फाइड हो, आप अपनी फैमिली से सेटिस्फाइड हो, तो नहीं सोचना चाहिए दूसरी कोई चीज है। आई थिंक मेरा ऐसा मानना है। तो आप अपनी दुनिया में रमिए, अच्छे इथिक्स को हमेशा, वो अच्छे इथिक्स को अपना के रखिए, कभी भी डाइवर्ट मत होइए ना गलत चीजों में जाके। अगर दुनिया ऐसा करे तो हमेशा करें, वो तो कर ही नहीं सकता, क्योंकि जिसके बचपन के संस्कार बहुत अच्छे हों वो तो डाइवर्ट हो ही नहीं सकता है, और जिसको खुद से गेन करने की आदत है तो उसको तो कोई झुका नहीं सकता।
डेफिनेटली ये एक हेल्दी इंसान बोल सकता है, लेकिन अगर किसी के लाइफ में चाइल्डहुड अब्यूज हुआ है, कोई तो भी इमोशनल ट्रॉमा हो गया ना, तो वो सेंसिटिव होता है ना, तो वहां पे काउंसलर हेल्प करेगा और साइकोलॉजिकल ट्रेनिंग देनी पड़ेगी, नॉट ओनली एक इंसान को, लेकिन एजुकेशन सिस्टम में भी अभी टाइम आ गया है कि ये सारी चीजें, एंगर मैनेजमेंट, फियर मैनेजमेंट, ये सारी चीजों को अभी पढ़ाना जरूरी है, ताकि आहिस्ता आहिस्ता समाज भी बदले।
पर मैंने जो देखा है कि ये पढ़ाने के बाद लोग ज्यादा समझदार हो गए, ताकि उन्हें ये पॉइंट समझ में आने लगा कि लोग किस तरह से दबते हैं, या साइकोलॉजिकल प्रेशर हम किसी बंदे पे कैसा डाल सकते हैं। आई थिंक मैंने जो देखा जब तक ये नॉलेज नहीं था साइकोलॉजिकल, तब तक वो समझ नहीं पाते थे कि हम प्रेशर किस पॉइंट पर दे रहे हैं। जब से उनको साइकोलॉजी की डेफिनेशन और इमोशनल और इंटेलिजेंसी और क्या होने से व्यक्ति पे हम दबाव डाल सकते हैं, तो वो ज्यादा समझदार हो गए हैं। स्पेशली सीबीएसई स्कूल में बहुत अच्छे से पढ़ाया जा रहा है ये साइकोलॉजी वगैरह का। तो वहाँ के जो हायर जो रहते हैं, तो वो कमेटी बना के, मतलब 2 4 6 लोग मिलके और किसी व्यक्ति को ज्यादा हैरेस करते हैं। ये मैंने हर स्कूल में देखा है। तो मतलब क्योंकि पीजीटी जी,
मुझे लगता है हम लोग एज अ सोसाइटी हम लोग मैच्योर हो रहे हैं अभी धीरे धीरे।
जी
ये जो मामला है, इसके मामले में हमारे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का और श्रद्धा के ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का भी यही महत्व है कि हम लोग सिर्फ उन्हीं लोगों को ट्रीटमेंट ना दे जो बीमार हो, पर कैसे लाइफस्टाइल को चेंज करके और ये थॉट प्रोसेस को चेंज करके कैसे हम एज अ सोसाइटी आगे बढ़े। I think there are other questions also coming up, Shraddha.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Audience. So there is. I think we'll take this last question, which has come from Professor Sandeep Deshmukh. Is emotional stress and mental stress different? And how to manage emotional and mental stress differently or together?
Mental stress, emotional stress is a part of mental stress. It's an umbrella definition, mental stress, okay? And under that comes emotional stress. So basically stress, okay, is, what is stress? Stress is when your coping mechanism towards the environment becomes, overwhelming, okay? You cannot cope. So emotions basically sense the mental stress, okay, and reports to the brain that, there is something in the environment which needs to be tackled, otherwise the survival is going to be a challenge sort of. So mental stress and emotional stress is one and the same, okay? But when it comes to stress, like I mentioned that there are two types of stresses: eustress and distress, okay? Eustress, stress, okay, is the positive stress, okay? The stress is good for us also, okay? So the stress that actually helps us stay motivated, work towards functionality, that's called eustress, okay? And stress that has come that you are experienced, which is actually leading you towards dysfunctionality, that is considered to be as distress, okay? This particular distress is what we need to deal with, okay? And how can be done is by problem solving strategies or mindfulness strategies, which I actually discussed, yeah, in the healthy coping strategies.
That was great, Shraddha, having you here. There is also questions coming up regarding the relations with their family members. And I think this is a very important topic and this needs a lot of attention. And I don't think we can address it in such a short time. And it's a very good opportunity that tomorrow at 4 p.m. We have a session on relationship with your families, where we have participations are my partner Yogi Sakha from Holistic Care Center, Dr. Chinmay Kulkarni, he's a renowned psychiatrist, Dr. Chinmay Kulkarni, and this is with participation from Dr. Ila Dedia. So I think we will see our audience regarding the queries regarding the relationship with their families, and we will address them tomorrow at 4 at the same channel. You can see us and you'll also get the links to attend them live. Yes, Shraddha, what would you like to say to conclude this session?
Yes, okay. There's a concluding slide that I have made, and most of the discussion I've done of the concluding slide. Just one slide, okay? Can I go?
Yes, please.
To conclude. Okay, concluding points. If you see that most of us know this diagram, the comfort zone, okay? So you notice this is the comfort zone where we feel safe and in control. Before the lockdown, we were here, okay? And many times in our life, we are mostly wanting to be here. But when we are threatened by an environment, when the distress comes in our life, okay, that's where the fear zone starts, where we lack self-confidence, we find excuses, and be affected by other people's opinion, especially with negative and toxic media updates. Now, if we choose to stay here, okay, that's where the depression and anxiety might start bubbling, okay? But if we overcome this fear zone by the help of a counselor or by the help of unconditional positive regard people and taking proper help, we will start gradually entering into the learning zone. Deal with challenges and problems, acquire new skills, extend your comfort zone, and then comes the growth zone. If you notice, what we are doing is in the learning zone. Earlier, we were interacting in physical form. Now we are interacting with digital form. What have we done is we have gone beyond our fear zones and we have started extending this comfort zone, and we have started acquiring new skill sets to do the same thing that we were doing before the lockdown. It's very, very important. Otherwise, you'll get stuck into the fear zone where the depression and anxiety will start breeding to the toxic level. After the learning zone, then comes the growth zone, finding purpose, living your dreams, setting new goals, and conquering objectives. Having said this, for taking actions, be in the present oriented, which I already mentioned in the Q&A, how you have to distract yourself from, unplug yourself from the abstract future anxiety or from the past, okay? It's when we are cornered, there is a choice to make. You know, always life will corner us some or the other time. Earlier we were cornered in our own space. Now we are cornered. We as a species are cornered at a very pandemic level, actually. Okay, so sometimes at an individualistic level we'll be cornered. Sometimes right now it's at a world level that we as a species are cornered. When that situation comes, what is happening is either we give up or we grow, and that's called the evolution code. Always there is a cornered situation. When we are getting cornered, that's the time where this decision has to be made. And that has been happening since ages, since evolution, okay? And the last thing I want to conclude here is mind and emotions management training should be taken seriously by educational institutions, governments, and other stakeholders for developing a psychologically herd immunity of our society. We just talk about COVID-19 herd immunity. That's not enough. No COVID, sooner or later it's going to go. But whenever such situations come, we all as a society need to have a herd immunity, which is psychological in nature, to combat all the physical stresses that might come in our individual life or at a social life. Okay, having said this, I just want to thank special thanks to Dr. Saurabh Talekar and the team of Holistic Care Center Mumbai. Thanks to all the audience who showed their interest and support on a topic that discusses mental health. All the best. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you, everyone. We will see you tomorrow. Same time, 4 p.m., same place, our channel, Holistic Care Center. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.